In today's video, we're going to look at the 6 key elements that make up a great visual identity. Hi, my name's Hugh, and I've been helping small businesses and entrepreneurs like you build better brands for nearly 20 years now. Now, in the last few videos on the channel, we've spoken a fair amount about some of the more strategic parts of brand building, brand positioning, and how you can put together a simple brand strategy really quickly. Now, but today I want to bring things back to the visual side of branding, because ultimately, if you think about it, often the first thing that someone comes into contact with a brand is often how it looks. If you think about it, before they even have an opportunity to step inside a store or speak to you personally, oftentimes they will have come across you in some form of advertising, or they've seen some signage, and it's often that visual aspect that has to work really well at creating a great first impression and drawing people in. So I'm certainly not going to sit here and say it's the most important part of a brand, but it's certainly an incredibly crucial element that you need to get right. So let's get straight into it, shall we? The most basic building block of your visual identity, your logo or brand mark. Now, I think when you're developing a logo, there are 3 key things that, as long as you keep in mind at all times, you won't go far wrong. And they are simplicity, impact, and flexibility. You need something that is immediate. You don't want something that's visually cluttered. You don't want something that's got too many elements. You don't want something that's too clever. I see lots of logos out there that are just trying to be too clever, and it puts an extra cognitive load on the person viewing the logo to get the logo, and it just doesn't work. That's great in advertising context, but in a logo we need it to be much more immediate than that. We don't want to ask the user or the customer to do any extra thinking. And in terms of flexibility, well, quite clearly we're going to be trying to use this logo in lots of different ways, and you'll see that brands out there, some brands approach their logo by using what's called a word mark, and that's simply where the brand name itself is the logo. Nikon is an example of this, Sony another one, Google, and then other brands might use symbols, so that you've got like Apple, MasterCard with the overlapping circles. A symbol only approach is kind of probably the preserve of the big brands. You need a lot of brand awareness to pull that off. So what I would encourage you to think about is a hybrid approach, where you develop a logo which has a symbol and has a word mark, some kind of unique word mark, and you can pull them apart and use them as and when it makes sense to do so. If you've ever tried to drop a logo into a social media profile image, the little circle that you get, and then looked at it and gone, well, you can hardly even see it. Exactly. So if you've got a symbol as part of your logo that you can drop in there, and it maintains that consistency with your brand. Okay, it's not the word mark itself, but you start to have something which works for you and for your brand in lots of different contexts. Color is another huge part of our visual identity, and the colors we use can say an awful lot about the kind of brand that we are without us even needing to use words. If you've ever painted a room in your house a new color and felt like the space was utterly transformed and felt completely new, then you'll understand just how important color is to how we perceive the world and how we experience the world. Now, when we're choosing a color for our brand and to work into our visual identity, we need to be aware of things like color psychology. Certain colors evoke certain feelings. There's a shared understanding in the Western world, certainly, that red equals danger or maybe excitement. Other colors might be more synonymous with tranquility or calm. So once we start to think about the feelings that we want to evoke when someone looks at our brand and looks at our visual identity, we can start to choose colors accordingly. The worst thing you can do is just pick your favorite color and be done with it. While it might not be as immediately obvious as, say, the logo or the color palette, the choice of fonts and the typographic styles that we use in a visual system, in a visual identity, play a really critical role in how that identity will be perceived. We've spoken lots before on this channel about how brands are like people and how we're trying to inject human personality traits into brands? Well, typefaces have personality types. Some typefaces will appear as very, very strong. Some will be traditional. Others might be playful and fun. So we can see that just by the choice of fonts that we use, we can start to inject some of these traits into our visual system and start to embody some of those traits without even needing to say it. If we've said that we want to be a fun brand, well, one of the ways that we can start to signal ourselves as being a fun brand is to use playful typography. And that way, without even needing to say, hey, we're a fun brand, people will start to understand and subliminally get what you're all about. So that choice of type is something that's really crucial, something that you should spend lots of time and consideration on, and definitely don't just skip over. It can seem like a slightly boring part of a visual identity or something that doesn't matter that much, but trust me, it's a really, really, really important step and one that you want to get right. Patterns are often a super overlooked area of a visual identity. Now, one of the challenges, I think, in building a visual identity is managing both flexibility and consistency. On the one hand, it's really, really crucial that we're consistent in how we apply our visual assets and our branding. We say that all the time. But on the other hand, we can't repeat ourselves too much visually. If we do, we risk being samey and people will switch off. So we need a certain amount of visual interest in our toolkits, and patterns are a really, really great way of adding that visual interest. You can use patterns in lots of different ways. You can zoom right in on a pattern. It's a very flexible brand asset to have. You can zoom right out and you'll get something that has a different feel but is still clearly from the same world. And think about, is there a way that you can develop a pattern based on your logo mark or your symbol? If you can do that, amazing, because you'll have a thread that runs through your toolkit now, and when you use that pattern, it's a subliminal nod back to your logo. So have a think about the kind of patterns that you want to use and how you might be able to use them, and it really will add some visual interest to your identity. The style of photography that you use within your visual system, within your visual identity, has a huge part in how you'll be perceived and how much coherence your identity has. If you're just pulling down random images from stock libraries and using them as and when, it's likely that your marketing collateral is going to have a higgledy-piggledy feel. There's not going to be any continuity there. It's not going to feel all on brand. And that's because a random assortment of images are going to just all be stylistically different. So the key thing here is to be mindful and to set out what that style is. And you can map this out through mood boards. You can mood board it and work out which one feels most appropriate to you. But you want to go for consistency here. So we might say that we want all the photography that we use as a brand is going to be light and airy and white, and we're going to have shallow depth of field, and we set that as a house rule, and we make sure then that our visual identity reflects that, and anything which doesn't use that house style we would consider to be off-brand. Just like with photography, there are 1,000,001 different styles of iconography and illustrative styles that we could choose to use. And then we might choose not to use. We might say that we're not going to use illustration within our toolkit, and that's fine too. But if we do, what we want to make sure we're doing is that, one, that style is in harmony with the brand we're trying to be. So we want to make sure that it aligns with the type of brand that we're trying to be, and that it works visually with the rest of the identity. And we also need to make sure that we're consistent in its application. I mentioned at the start of the video that I was going to put in a bonus tip right at the end. So here it is. When you're working on this stuff, and that is whether you've engaged the services of someone else to work on this stuff for you or you're doing it yourself, the one thing I want you to do, really, really concentrate on doing this, is step out of your own shoes and step into the shoes of the customer or your target audience. You are not creating this visual system for yourself, for your eyes. You should be looking at and making every decision through the eyes of a customer. And that way, you have taken yourself entirely out of the equation. And it's a tricky thing to do, I know, on something that you're working on and something that you're so close to. It is a hard thing to do, but you will get a better result if you can take your own biases and preferences out of the equation. So there you have it, guys. I hope you found something useful in this today. If you did, please would you consider liking and subscribing below. There's also a link down there too to my email newsletter, so you can sign up to that. It's free. You can get some branding tips and tricks straight into your inbox, and I'll see you in the next one.